I was very sad last year when Hong Kong film director Benny Chan Muk Sing died. I'm not always a fan of his work, but some of his films are some of my favourites. And I've just recently seen his last film that he was working on when he died, Raging Fire. So I'm going to talk a bit about Benny's films and why I like them, why I don't like them, and talk a bit about Raging Fire. If you haven't seen the films that I'm talking about, there may be some minor spoilers, so please be warned before we go on. So I was first introduced to the work of Benny Chan. I started collecting Hong Kong films in late 1994 when I was 14 years old. And around that time there were Eastern Heroes and Made in Hong Kong and MIA Hong Kong Classics, who were all releasing films on video in the UK, and some other more minor companies. And the company Made in Hong Kong released a videotape of A Moment of Romance sometime in the mid-90s. I didn't get it immediately when it came out, but I did see it sometime in the mid to late 90s. I'm not exactly sure, probably about 97, 98 when I was 17, 18 years old. And that film had a really deep effect on me. It's such a good film. I'd already seen some Andy Lau stuff, and I really liked Andy Lau, which is the reason I got the film. I'm like, oh, it's a drama, but it's Andy Lau, so it might be good. I was surprised just how good it was. Ung Sing Ling playing the love interest, and Ung Man Tat, comic relief. Everything in that film was good, especially the soundtrack. And a few years later, when the internet became a thing, I found some people in Hong Kong who were selling CDs, and I bought 4 CDs of Music by the Beyond and paid to have them sent to the UK so that I could try and find the 2 songs in A Moment of Romance that I knew they'd done. At this time you couldn't find out the information you needed on the internet. I didn't know the names of the songs. I'd only been able to find out they were by the Beyond. And I did manage to get them on those 4 CDs, thankfully. I listened to those so many times. So Moment of Romance was my first introduction to Benny Chan's work. Since then I've seen many of his films, not all, but many. Son on the Run I didn't like. What a Hero, some of it I liked, some of it I didn't. The comedy was okay. Andy Lau was good in it, but some of it was a bit too silly. Moment of Romance 2, not as good as the first one. Magic Crane I didn't like at all. Man Wanted was actually quite good. Simon Yam, who's always good, and it's actually a very dark film. In Benny's films you see a lot of comedy, and then there's times when he goes really dark. Man Wanted was one of those. Then we come to 1996. He made Big Bullet. I didn't see that until when I just turned 18 in December 1998. I went to Hong Kong, and coincidentally it was the Jackie Chan life story event. They were doing an exhibition at the Hong Kong Exhibition Centre, and I went over as a member of the UK fan club, which was really crappy, and the trip wasn't arranged in the way it was supposed to be. And we were supposed to be seeing Who Am I in a cinema, which was the new release just coming out for Chinese New Year. But because the local cinema distributors had complained about the length of the film, it had been withdrawn, and they were trying to edit it down at the time, so they screened Mr. Nice Guy for us instead. I'm very disappointed. I really rather like Who Am I, and to this day I wish the director's cut with all the extra footage, like Jackie riding on the rhino and all of that stuff, was available, but it's still not. So anyway, when I went to Hong Kong, I came back with a load of films, and I picked up my first laser discs while I was there, and one of them was The Big Bullet. And to this day, Big Bullet is still one of my favourite films, not just by Benny, but of Hong Kong modern day films in general. There's an undercurrent of comedy through it that I really liked. Lau Ching Wan, who's Hong Kong's best actor by far. Maybe still is, I don't know. At that time I thought he was the bee's knees. I still think he's great. And the girl who played Apple has a brother called Microsoft. I forgot her name, but she was so good in that. And Jordan Chan, who I generally don't like, he's a miserable git, but in the context of the film, he was perfect. It's not the best story, it's not the best action, but it's highly entertaining, and I just love it. I think it's a great film overall. So Big Bullet is good. Who am I? All the stuff about the meteorite is kind of dumb, but most of the rest of the film is quite good. I like it. The stuff with him losing his memory, being in the African tribe, the stuff in Holland, the fight on the roof of the building with Ron Smurenberg. It's not Jackie's best action, but it's quite well done. It's rather entertaining. I've watched Who Am I many times and I rather like it. Then Gen X Cops came along, and again, it's not the greatest of films, but the newcomers in it, Nicholas Chee, Stephen Fung, and especially Sam Lee. I discovered Sam Lee from this film, and I love him so much. He's just so sick and twisted. I love him. So Gen X Cops, kind of good. Some good moments in there. And I rather like the soundtrack, so I learnt to sing the song from the end credits, and I have the soundtrack CD as well. Wo mo hey wai chi an sai do le loi wo chui sing le di 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 di. Song called You Can't Stop Me, which I rather like. Then Gen Y Cops, not so good. Heroic Duo, I actually rather like. I thought was good. Ekin Cheng, I forgot who the other guys. Leon Lai, I think, was in it. I haven't watched it in a few years, but I've got to see it again. I've got the DVD. It's a good film. I want to see it again. Then comes New Police Story. And again, it's not Jackie's best action. I thought the stuff with the exhibition centre on the roof was kind of dumb. And the fight with the Lego, I didn't like that. It's not a great film for action, but story-wise it's good. And again, Benny goes kind of dark. Jackie being an ex-cop haunted by his past, turned alcoholic. And the stuff that drives him to alcoholism, you can kind of understand why it happens. I thought the setup to that film was brilliant. I was just a bit sad that the payoff at the end wasn't so good. And with Raging Fire, which I get to in a minute, we kind of have the opposite. The setup wasn't so good, but the payoff at the end is pretty nice. So we'll get to that in a minute. Then Divergent, which for me was so-so. Rob B. Hood, I like some of it, but it's too silly. Then we come to possibly Benny's best film. It's either A Moment of Romance or Invisible Target for me is his best film. And I actually think Invisible Target is probably the last hurrah for Hong Kong cinema. It had been dying out since the mid to late 90s. It was getting worse and worse due to budgets getting lower, talent going elsewhere, China trying to stamp its authority upon the Hong Kong business. Ever since Hong Kong films became Chinese co-productions with the odd Hong Kong star here and there, they haven't been like they used to be. I don't like the mainland China stuff so much. Like the old mainland stuff, the Kung Fu stuff is alright, but the last 15-20 years, all of the like Wire Fu and the army stuff and the silly comedies, I don't really like them much at all. And I think Invisible Target was probably the last film that came out of Hong Kong that I was truly struck by. When I first came to Thailand in 2007, the trailer was playing in all the cinemas, and I didn't know anything about the film. I just saw the trailer and saw the trailer again and again and again and again and again because I love the trailer so much. But then I couldn't find a cinema that was playing it with English subtitles. I could only find Thai dub or a Chinese with Thai subtitles, so I didn't watch the film. And I was really pissed off about that at the time. So as soon as the DVD came out in Hong Kong, I paid the money to import it. And loved the film so much. And I don't watch it as often as I should, but it is a really good film. Even Jackie Chan's son, JC, who I generally don't like, but he's actually good in the film. I liked him in this film. So I think Invisible Target is maybe Benny's best. Then we have a number of films which are so-so. A lot of people say White Storm is great. For me it was okay, but not the best. Call of Heroes I've got on Blu-ray. I didn't like Call of Heroes so much. It was okay, but not great. Meow I haven't seen, I must admit. Uh, Connected I didn't like very much, frankly. So that brings us to Raging Fire. And I'll try not to give too many spoilers. Raging Fire, like New Police Story, is about a cop who's haunted by his past. The cop being Donnie Yen, the past being Nicholas Chi, who used to be a good guy, who was turned into a bad guy by the events that we see unfold in the film. And they showed what happened in the past as a flashback part way into the film, which I think was a mistake. I think they should have just shown it in a linear fashion. And unlike many of Benny's films which have an undercurrent of comedy running through them, Raging Fire is a very serious film. And I think that's actually to its detriment in some ways, because it's too serious and there's a lot of talking and a lot of plot. And in the first half of the film we do have a small action sequence in a shopping mall, and there's a car chase that's not particularly great, but it's mostly drama and talking and setting things up, and it takes far too long to get going. I actually got bored by the first half of the film. My mind wandered and I was thinking about other things. But then we get to the last 30 minutes or so of the film, and we have a big action sequence out on the streets. It's a gunplay sequence, really. And then we have what was in the trailer with Donnie and Nick fighting in the church. And all of that stuff is quite good. It's not the best. Donnie's done much better action. Nicholas Chi's actually done better action. But it's quite well done and I rather enjoyed it. And if the whole film had been like the last 20 to 30 minutes, I would probably be singing its praises a lot more. As it stands, I give it about a 5 out of 10. It's not awesome, but it's not bad. It's just takes a while to get interesting. So if you like Donnie, if you like Nicholas Chi, if you like Benny Chan, you should watch it. It's Benny Chan's last film, so you should watch it just for that, really. One thing that I did particularly like at the end, they showed some behind the scenes footage, some of it Benny at work, and they of course made the film a tribute to Benny, deservedly. And I quite liked the song at the end of the film. Usually Nicholas Chi's songs are just generic so-so to me. He has done 2 other songs that I particularly liked in the past. There was a theme song from Matadi Fumaka, Half Smoked. I really love that music, that's a great song. And there's also, I think it was his song from Young and Dangerous the prequel, Dim Dim How da, 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 da. I kinda like that song from the start of that film. But generally I'm not a big fan of his work, but the song at the end of Raging Fire is actually rather good. It's kinda generic mostly, but there's 2 parts in the song where it comes to kind of a crescendo, and I quite like those parts of the song. And there is another song that Nick Chi and some other people who have worked with Benny over the years did, called A Real Man, which is a cover of a George Lamb song, and that's okay, but it's not as good, although it is a tribute to Benny, proper tribute. But I couldn't get the lyrics down to that song and I don't like it as much, so I'm going to attempt to sing the song from the end of Raging Fire. It's kind of a tribute to Benny just because I like the song and I feel like doing it. It's a song called Confrontation, sung by Nicholas Chi, who also plays guitar, accompanied on the piano by Donnie Yen. Surprisingly, I didn't know Donnie could play piano. So I'm probably going to murder the Cantonese language. You can laugh as much as you want at my poor pronunciation, but I had a go.
Con này
平行世界沒什麼意義，交啲詞，狂風就似，上線各有命運的際遇，相相是仲怪長處，對手都有共性的心魔。才能一聲當真知對不出錯，到了批判善惡的一刻，如何辨認是敵是友，是罪孽或是因果？永生不息節無破壞有時，建立有時。上升也最對峙，快樂有時，決裂有時，同行或敵對，互相交錯地不可更深去找當有先生有效，不見光心會黑生要四互善更鬥，彼此要找對手。互相交織宇宙，炎浪曬太溫要黑要白，生活前無一幸免，明明各個世界都要有。毀滅前同一陣線，對手都有共性的心魔，才能一聲當真知對不出錯。到了批判善惡的一刻，如何辨認是敵是友，是罪孽或是因果？永生不息節無破壞有時，建立有時，喪生也在對峙。快樂有時，決裂有時，同行或敵對，就雙方最後的對手。為彼此的正義，冷靜有時，憤怒有時，雙生也在對峙。快樂有時，決裂有時，同行或敵對，互相交數地不可更深去找當有先生後又不見光心為黑生要四互善更鬥。當一發不再手，或者是好戰鬥。Miss you, Benny. Wish you were still here.